perimenopause, menopause, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And, the things that you were able to get away with in your 20s and 30s, you can't get away with anymore.
No.
So we're now looking at weight gain, energy loss, and lack of sleep, the big three.
Yeah.
So this is how we got here.
Yeah. And that whole piece about being disconnected from self, it really is at the core of so many issues that I see my clients about. They come with symptoms, probably as yours do as well. They come with these symptoms, but underneath it, when you peel back the layers, you always end up with this: I'm not operating from a place of authenticity. I'm not trusting myself. I'm not living in alignment with myself. I've betrayed myself, and through no fault of your own at all. It's not our fault that we do that. We live in a world that encourages it for the sake of usually profits, usually things like that. Welcome to the Menopause Mindset Podcast, the place to get some answers and feel supported along this often a bumpy journey. Many people sail through menopause, but many people don't. And so my guests and I are here to motivate you and inspire you so that you can make menopause a happier transition for yourself and for your loved ones. I'm Sally Garozzo, an award-winning clinical hypnotherapist, a menopause educator, and I can't wait to share my passion about wellness and how we navigate these changes and transitions. So come on then, let's dive in. So my guest today is Holly Bertone. Holly spent 20 years in consulting and federal government service, primarily in the FBI, where she was a chief of staff. After struggling with breast cancer, autoimmune disease, and debilitating chronic fatigue, she created a unique methodology to heal herself. Holly combines the principles of performance and mindset to coach successful women who are stressed and burned out to unleash their comeback story so that they can ditch exhaustion and achieve optimal health and performance. She's been featured on over 250 virtual and physical stages as an expert on using mindset to overcome adversity and create your comeback story. So Holly, a massive welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Sally, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's such an honor to be here.
I'm so excited to chat to you, get to know you, to dive into some mindset stuff. But really, first of all, I really want to get to know you. And that's quite an ordeal. We've got breast cancer in there. We've got autoimmune. We've got chronic fatigue. That's a lot. So can you talk us through your journey of how you went from being chief of staff at the FBI to doing what you do today? I know I'm going to be fascinated by that story. So yeah, over to you.
I know it is such an incredible journey. And I know so many people are like, how did you go from, the FBI is very, male dominated and that masculine energy. And as a holistic health coach and working with women in midlife, it's, a lot more of that feminine energy. But the through line started when I was about 10 years old. And I'll dive into my story here in a second, but I think it's important to share where it all began. And when I was about 10 or so, one of my favorite pastimes, I love to do jigsaw puzzles.
Oh.
And we had this huge dining room table, and I would take 3 different jigsaw puzzles and I would dump them out on the dining room table. And I'd mix them up and I would put them back together.
Wow.
Yeah. Nerd alert. But, I always laugh about the kid from The Sixth Sense, he goes, I see dead people. And, my thing is I see patterns. I've always been like that.
Oh, wow.
So when I was brought in to the FBI post 9/11, so this was back when, the internet was still very new. Systems were still very new. The government agencies in the U.S. were certainly not talking to each other. The agencies within themselves were not talking to each other. And
sounds like the NHS over here.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wasn't an agent. I was in project management.
Okay.
And my role really was I worked with different pieces of the FBI and looked at how can we start connecting these disparate pieces that aren't talking to each other. We actually had mandates from Congress that came out from the 9/11 Commission and the WMD Commission report respectively. So taking those recommendations and mandates and looking at the disparate pieces of the FBI, the national security space, and putting them together so that, like gets together with like, and, more efficient systems are in place. So again, this is the exact same thing that I did when I was a kid with putting puzzles together, the exact same brain pattern.
Yeah.
And fast forward, and I'll get to my story here in a second, but fast forward, that's exactly what I do as a holistic health coach, especially for women in midlife, because we have become so disconnected from ourselves. And midlife is such a beautiful opportunity to really come back home to ourselves. That's why I named my program Back to You, because this is the time to come back home to you, and to take all of these pieces of our lives and the puzzles and start putting those pieces back together to help women come back home to themselves. So there really is a through line, even though the journey sounds crazy.
It does. It does sound quite disconnected, but actually what I always say is you take you with you everywhere you go. So no matter what you're doing, you will find you in all of that. And as long as you're being authentic to yourself, well, even if you're not, like, you will still find you in everything that you do.
Right,
so yeah, I love that you've said that. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So to get into the journey, I love to start the health journey from the day before, because I think it's important that the contrast really creates that clarity. In that I was diagnosed with breast cancer on my 39th birthday. And what had happened was I was a competitive triathlete. I raced in mountain bike races. I'd stand on a podium, get a medal around my neck. I was a competitive Xterra triathlete, which is the off-road triathlons. And again, I was the chief of staff for counterintelligence at the FBI. I had a very high-powered, high-stress position. Like, I was literally what I thought was living my best life and on top of the world. Like, I did not think that life could get any better. And that diagnosis hit really hard.
I bet.
It did.
Did you sort of see it as a personal failure? Because I know some people do when they're that healthy and health is a really high value.
I did, because, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I thought that because I was a competitive athlete and that I weighed 110 pounds, I was quote unquote thin. I thought that meant that was the epitome of health.
Right.
And I realized that could be further from the truth.
Wow.
That health is not the number between your two toes.
Wow.
And just because I was quote unquote thin, I was not healthy. I was living a stress-filled, adrenaline junkie, burnout lifestyle. I was a sugaraholic. My diet was probably 90% processed foods, if not more.
Wow.
Even I would say 95% processed foods, plus, a lot of environmental factors, plus emotional traumas. And, it was just an avalanche of factors that I think fell into it. But at the time, my doctor just said, well, she just kind of shrugged her shoulders and she was like, well, lightning struck. Because I was like, well, I'm 39 and I'm healthy. At least I thought I was. How did this happen? Like, I thought breast cancer is just for old women. And, the reality was that no, it's cancer is the end stage of a lot of chronic inflammation, which then creates disease. And what I didn't know was that because I was just like, well, this is, there's nothing I can do. Lightning hit.
Yeah.
And so I just assumed that there was nothing I could do. So I did not change anything.
Wow. Okay.
So I continued to go 100 miles an hour. I had a young stepson at the time and, driving across town, working a very stressful job and driving across town to pick him up, doing the PTA stuff and going grocery shopping. I never stopped. And, I thought from that perspective, my health failed me. But again, the doctor said lightning struck. So that right then wasn't quite a failure. It was more just like a pivot. So I went through the chemo, surgery, chemo, radiation. But what happened was because I didn't make any changes with my health, I just got sicker and sicker. and was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease 1 year later, which was Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is basically the autoimmune component of a very slow and sluggish thyroid.
Right.
Which then kicked off debilitating chronic fatigue. And the fatigue was manageable for the first few years, but it got so bad that in 2017, I was actually forced to resign from my dream job at the FBI because I was basically bedridden. I mean, I could barely function. And that was the biggest rock bottom because my entire identity was wrapped around being a successful career woman. I was married at the time. I'm now divorced, but being a wife and a stepmother and having these perfectionist tendencies that if I don't have this career and I'm not successful and I'm not contributing to my family, I'm a failure.
Right.
So that's really when that avalanche of I'm a failure kicked in.
Yeah.
Was at that rock bottom.
Wow. That is huge. That is such a big thing to deal with, especially as you said, that your identity is woven into what you do, your athleticism, your job, and then all of a sudden it's not there. So then I would imagine your healing journey started. How on earth did you get to where you are today from that rock bottom point?
It was, I think from start to finish, it was about 12 years.
Wow. Okay.
The first 6 years, I lived from the mindset that there's nothing I can do. This is just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I lived from that place of I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. And that was full on victim mentality. Mm-hmm. That was full on marinating in my misery.
Where did that come from, do you think, that victim mentality?
I think just my doctors shrugging their shoulders, saying, We're not sure what's wrong with you, getting sicker and sicker instead of getting better, and just not understanding how disease forms, not understanding the body, not understanding how we operate, not understanding health, not understanding any of that.
Sure.
And relying on doctors to shrug their shoulder and say there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big piece of it was, it was a lot of just the frog in the boiling water, as they say.
Yeah.
You hear over and over again, I don't know what's wrong with you. There's nothing we can do. And when that's all you hear, that's all you believe until you don't. And I wish I could say there was, I don't know, some flash in the sky or some big epic moment that caused everything to turn. And really there wasn't. I just woke up one day and I'm like, I'm not okay living like this. And my goal was to get 10% better. My goal was to say, I just want to function. Like, I mean, at that point, optimal health, vibrant health, that wasn't even on the radar. I just wanted to function. And to be able to, to wake up and, maybe do a little bit of work from home and then, and then take care of my family. Like that's all that I wanted. And I was on a mission to figure that out. And that's when I became a certified holistic health coach, was during that whole process. Yeah. But at the same time, the certification, everything I learned was great information, but it didn't move the needle for me.
Yeah.
And what I learned was that, nutrition, movement can do so much, but there's a lot of other components.
Yeah.
And that's when I started just really on my own curiosity, my own exploration, what needs to happen? Like, I felt like I was doing everything right. I felt like I was doing what they were doing. Like, again, this was, back in 2017, and functional medicine was, I don't know necessarily it was new, but it was a lot newer than it is today and not as popular. And so just really that exploration of what's working, what's not working. And every day figuring out, okay, if this is working, let's do a little more of this. If this isn't working, let's do a little less of this. So that second half was 6 years of a lot of just slow and painful success and failure, but I didn't give up.
You just kept going. Yeah. Cause that's what you see, isn't it? In a health journey is the gathering of the information. So going down all those rabbit holes, listening to all the podcasts, finding all the gurus and the people and the inspiring figures that have walked that path, and then trying to apply that to your own life.
Yeah.
Is such a big thing, because then you go, okay, so this is what I've got to do. I need to rest more, sleep better, do this diet, exercise more. But then you come up against all your personality blocks, all the childhood trauma, all the behavioral patterns that you have that are stopping that progress. So that, I think, is actually something that we can speak to. What would you say? What makes some people be able to go walk down that path and other people not, and other people stay stuck?
Yeah. And I think the biggest reason that people stay stuck, and I saw it myself, and I recognized this as a pattern with myself. And as I became, a health coach and started working with clients, I also noticed the pattern, again, back to
patterns, yeah.
over and over again, of what separates the woman who sees success versus the woman who continues to struggle. And for me, starting out, it was looking at, I call it a base camp cycle, because I think so often we want to do the thing. Like, we love to take action in life, or like, just tell me what I need to do and I'm going to go do it. Like, we're used to getting stuff done. That's just kind of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was taking a step back and looking at us from the perspective of, I want to go climb the mountain. So for me, it was improving my health. When I work with, my clients, we're looking more on that space where they're healthy, quote unquote. But, dealing with a lot of those midlife issues like weight gain, energy loss. And so weight gain, energy loss, and lack of sleep. Those are the big three.
Mm-hmm.
So we go on this path to say, I want to improve my health. I want to lose weight. I want to, get my energy back. I want to sleep better. And we started the base camp of the mountain, which is why I call this the base camp cycle. Like, we get excited, and mostly it's from an event or a trigger. Like, I turned 49, or I've got a class reunion coming up, or, I've got a vacation or a wedding anniversary or a trip or something like that, that really sets us into motion. And it's kind of the same thing with New Year's resolutions. I mean, 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. And this is the reason. And we get excited. We do the thing because that we are so excited. We have this trigger, and we get excited, and we go down this path of doing. And then what happens is that the doing, right, the thing becomes a little difficult.
Yeah.
And we get discouraged. And what happens when we're discouraged, we're now relying on willpower.
Mm-hmm.
So we get excited for about 2 weeks. We get discouraged. We're now relying on willpower. Willpower is going to last you about another week or so. And then 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, an obstacle happens. And that obstacle, it doesn't even have to be anything big. It's a rainy day. It's working late. It's a, argument with your spouse, like whatever it is. And we're now like, you know what? I'm just going to do it on Monday. I'm just going to start again on Monday.
Yeah.
And then Monday never happens. And so instead of climbing the mountain, we're right back down at base camp.
Base camp. Wow. Okay.
And I think a big piece of this is based off of, you were talking about the kind of the limiting beliefs and the stories and traumas. And especially as I see working with women in midlife, is we're still carrying around so many stories from our past.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see it as well with your practice too.
Yeah.
And, so many of us, when we were growing up, we were told that we were the smart one, or we were the pretty one.
Yeah.
Or we were the good for nothing one. Right? And that becomes that validation. So by the time we're in our 20s and 30s, we are now chasing what society tells us is supposed to be happiness and success. Mm-hmm. We chase the perfect career, the rewarding, fulfilling career. We chase, we're supposed to have the perfect spouse. We're supposed to have the 2.5 kids in the big house. And we chase all of these things because we believe that these things are going to give us our happiness and our validation.
Yeah.
So we're now relying on all of this external stuff. So, by the time we're in our 30s, right, we're chasing this and we're starting to accumulate some or all of the things. And by the time we hit our 40s, we have some or all of this stuff. And as women, we're caregivers and we give our all to everything. So we have these pieces in our life. And by the way, they talk about the 2.5 kids. And I was like, yeah, the 0.5 is actually your aging parent. No one tells you that. So you got to add that to the equation too.
That's
right?
Very true. Or your immature husband or partner.
So we've got all of these pieces that are external to us that are providing our validation, right? And we're giving all of ourselves to all of these pieces. And we have absolutely nothing left. So we are now fully disconnected from ourselves. And we're fully disconnected. Our energy is totally drained because we're giving so much to everyone and everything. And then our health gets pushed to the side. And guess what? In your 40s and 50s and beyond, perimenopause, menopause, it's a whole different ballgame. And, the things that you were able to get away with in your 20s and 30s, you can't get away with anymore.
No.
So we're now looking at weight gain, energy loss, and lack of sleep, the big three.
Yeah.
So this is how we got here.
Yeah. And that whole piece about being disconnected from self, it really is at the core of so many issues that I see my clients about. They come with symptoms, probably as yours do as well. They come with these symptoms, but underneath it, when you peel back the layers, you always end up with this: I'm not operating from a place of authenticity. I'm not trusting myself. I'm not living in alignment with myself. I've betrayed myself.
Yeah.
And through no fault of your own at all. It's not our fault that we do that. We live in a world that encourages it for the sake of usually profits, usually things like that. And it's not rhythmic enough for our body, especially the female body, which requires that sort of slow rhythmic cycle. So I'm glad you brought up that disconnection piece, because I think it's so important to really keep reiterating that when we're talking about recovery. Yeah. So how do you get your clients to reconnect with themselves?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you asked this, and we can dive into the Rocky framework.
Yeah.
I call it Rocky because of I would say one of the original and the best comeback movies ever, the original Rocky from 1976. And, and I think especially as women in midlife, we grew up with those movies from the 80s and that 80s movie montage, and you've got Jennifer Fields pulling up the leg warmers and Karate Kids painting the fence. And, we grew up where that montage was so much fun. So that's where I like to, play in this space, because some of these health challenges can be very frustrating and very difficult and very serious. So I like to, play in that space of let's just have fun with this.
Yeah.
So that's why, and spoiler alert, Rocky in the original movie actually went 15 rounds with Apollo Creed, but he lost the fight. Everyone thinks that he won, but he actually lost the fight.
Well, Rocky lost the fight. Oh,
the
wow.
very first movie, right? Everyone was like, wait, he lost? I thought he won. But that's exactly the thing. Like, you would never call Rocky a loser, right?
No.
He won because of who he became. And that's why I love having the Rocky inspired framework. And the biggest piece, and this is what we do inside of my program, is we go backwards before we go forwards. Mm-hmm. Because I think there's so many, we grew up with that 80s and 90s diet culture. Here is the thing, go do the thing. Well, the thing doesn't work, and the thing doesn't work anymore, and the thing continues to not work. So let's go backwards first. And what we do is we break those chains and we break those tethers that are holding us back and holding us from those limiting beliefs. So R stands for rear view mirror. And that is when we get right and we make peace with our past. I like to say you can't go into your DeLorean. You can't jump into the DeLorean and go back and actually change the past. but what you can do is make peace with it. And that's peace and forgiveness with the situation or situations, peace and forgiveness with the other people. And most importantly, it's peace and forgiveness with ourselves. And I used to always say I was bullied for 12 years growing up. And I used to always say there's nothing that anyone can say to me that I haven't already said to myself that was 10 times worse. So I think a big piece of that isn't just forgiving all of the stuff, all of the baggage and the trauma and everything that got us here. It's once we do that, it's also that inner forgiveness. And that's huge because, like I said, we have all of these pieces that are external to us that we are tethered to. And if we can break those chains, if we can break that tether, I mean, and you kind of think about it. If you have a bad day, just something small, like someone cut you off in traffic. And what do? You call your best friend and you're like, oh my goodness, you're never going to believe what happened. And you kind of spiral, right? You get spun up into the situation and you go through the whole thing. You hang up, you don't feel better. So what do? You call your next best friend and you pretty much repeat verbatim, like the same words come out of your mouth. You tell the exact same story in the exact same way and you hang up, you don't feel better. So you go home and you complain to your partner, you go into work the next day, you complain to your coworkers, like you fall asleep at night and that's all you can think about. You're just replaying this and ruminating over and over and over again. This is something small. So we're talking the small stuff. I talk about a comeback. It doesn't have to be something big or traumatic. It's all of the little stuff. It's all of these little pieces every single day that we're now disconnected from ourselves. Yeah.
So your comeback story isn't necessarily the big comeback, the rocky comeback. It can be your comeback in every moment. You're coming back to yourself in every moment. Where have I lost myself in this moment? Where am I giving my power away in this moment? Where am I forgetting who I am? Where am I acting inauthentically? So I love that. Yeah, because I wasn't 100% sure what you meant by comeback. And I think it's good that you've clarified that.
Yeah. And also when we're in this state of running and burnout and doing all the things for everyone else, we're also in this chronic state where our nervous system is not regulated. We've got our sympathetic and parasympathetic, and we're constantly in that sympathetic stress state. And I think what we view when something happens, again, it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Someone cuts us off in traffic. We have to work late. Our boss dumps something on our desk, like whatever it is. And we view it as one song. So whether, listen to Spotify or, Apple, music or whatever, like you think of it as one song. But what happens is that it's not one song. Our brain views it as a concert.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, when you're at a concert and you're there and it's late at night and you're dancing and singing and, maybe drinking a little and having fun with your friends and you're out past your bedtime, lots of bright lights, lots of loud music. When you come home, do you get a good night's sleep or a bad night's sleep?
Yeah, bad night's sleep. Definitely.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, I'm actually going to we've got a local carnival. So I'm taking my dad tonight to the concert at the carnival. And I blocked out my calendar tomorrow. I'm like, I'm not having any appointments because I know what concerts do. So, but that's the thing. Our brain doesn't view it as one song. Our brain views it as a concert because there's so many of these songs every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year. So our brain is now constantly like thinking that we're at a concert, which is why we can't sleep, which then we feel tired. We craving comfort foods. We're like, oh, I'm too tired. I'm not going to exercise today. And it's again, just, back to that base camp cycle.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also, coming back to the rearview mirror, one of the other things that popped up for me was what's important. The reason why it's important to look back is to get an understanding of why you are the way that you are.
Yes.
And when you can understand why, you realize it's not your fault. It's the environment that you grew up in. You didn't get your needs met. Maybe your home life was chaotic and there were a lot of arguments. You then become that chaos becomes familiar to you, so you seek it out totally unconsciously. But when you flag it up and when you bring it to the conscious mind, you don't have to make those. You don't have to engage in that same cycle anymore, because there's an understanding, there's a light bulb moment, there's a conscious choice that you can make in every moment going forward. So that's why I find looking back quite powerful, not to ruminate, not to keep going back over and over it, but just to get illuminations that we can bring in. So yeah. So what's the O then? This episode is brought to you by my Cold Water Therapy Practitioner's Diploma. This online self-paced course is for you if you're in the wellbeing industry and you want to become a certified cold water therapy practitioner with this globally accredited and insurable diploma. The popularity of cold water therapy is on the rise as people look for alternative ways to manage pain and inflammation, boost their immunity, lose weight, improve mental health, and keep themselves adapted to stress. This course covers the history of cold water therapy, facts about cold water, the physiological and mental changes that occur during cold water exposure, acclimatization, non-shivering thermogenesis, after-drop and rewarming, the multiple benefits of cold water therapy, including its effect on your metabolism, immune system, and mental health, how to offer cold water therapy to clients safely and effectively using ice baths or out in a body of water. It includes breath work for cold exposure, polyvagal theory, how to minimize fear of the cold, and the business of cold water therapy. In this course, you get 1 hour of on-demand video, 37 articles with audio transcriptions for learning on the go, 7 in-depth modules. It's assessed via multiple choice, and you can retake as many times as you need to. You get lifetime access, mobile access, access to an online community, one-to-one support, badges for your website, and a lovely certificate on completion. So what are you waiting for? Become a cold water therapy practitioner today for just £127. To enroll, just head on over to sallygarozzo.com/cold. This episode is brought to you by my 30-day transformational rapid rewire package, which includes the infamous rapid transformational therapy. Here's why it can help at menopause. You see, menopause is not just an estrogen deficiency. It's a complete life transition that often requires a deeper look at what's driving our anxiety, insomnia, relationship issues, disordered eating and drinking, and even the financial issues we have, not to mention the physical symptoms. RTT with me inside my 30-day transformational rapid rewire package can absolutely help with that. RTT is a therapeutic process that uses powerful evidence-based techniques to provide you with the tools that you need to make positive change. The roots of RTT are drawn from traditional psychotherapy, CBT, positive suggestion therapy, parts therapy, inner child work, and mindfulness. But what makes it super powerful is that the process is done under hypnosis. Now, hypnosis is nothing weird, it's just an altered state of focus, just like the one you get into when you're watching a really good film. I'm 100% committed to making our time together beautiful, memorable, and life-changing. Working with me is highly personalised and helps you to reframe any negative beliefs, values, habits, and emotions, many of which you may have carried with you since childhood. Together, we tap into your superconscious mind, giving you the potential to alter the way that you think and put an end to negative self-talk and self-sabotage so that you can approach life in a positive way and move forward liberated from whatever ails you. If you're interested to know more, just visit bit.ly/RTT with Sally. I can't wait to support you through this life-changing transition. Rocky.
Well, and that you absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's not your fault.
Mm.
And I like to say ... But it is, if you want to change your life, it is your responsibility
Yeah.
to make those changes. And
Yeah.
that's where O comes in,
Okay.
which is own your, I call it ship with a P, like the boat. So I like to keep it G-rated. So own your ship, which is personal responsibility. And when we can, and I know responsibility isn't popular these days, but if you want to change, you need to accept, like, that looking in the mirror is one of the hardest things to do. And, with my students in my program, we go through a series of exercises where, it's gentle and it's safe, but it is brutal to look in the mirror, to start peeling back those layers of, going back and looking at the past. But what happens is that they see the patterns too, and they can start connecting the dots, and they start seeing, like, oh, this is why. And it becomes crystal clear, and they can start to break those chains. But it also requires, like, hey, I actually want to change. And I think one of the hardest things is to look in the mirror and say, I'm ready to do this. When I was in that place of rock bottom with my health, that was one of the most difficult things to do. Fast forward 2 years ago, when, we were in the process of getting a divorce, I looked in the mirror, and, so many people going through a divorce, I applied the same methodology, and so many people going through a divorce, they live in this place of, the blame and the shame and the resentment and the bitterness and the anger and all of these colorful emotions. But I looked in the mirror and I said, how was the marriage my responsibility, and how is the divorce my responsibility? And that right there totally changed how I showed up when we were getting a divorce, which totally changed how my ex showed up. And, so I love this framework because it doesn't just work on your health, it literally works on your life or anything.
And also, I think responsibility, when you actually recognize that you can take responsibility, and it's not a dirty word, it doesn't have to be a dirty word, it's actually very empowering.
It is.
You're like, no, okay, I can control what I can control. And I like that about responsibility. It feels good. When you have that moment of, okay, I'm going to own this. And I've been told by my husband, you know what? You're a bit miserable at the moment. Like, can we have a bit of positivity? And I'm like, yeah, actually, you're right. I have been miserable. And of course, it's a punch in the stomach, but it's a moment in time where you can change. There's an invitation to shift or to change something in that moment. So I love that. I love the O.
It's the ability to respond. I mean, that's really all that it is.
Yeah.
And back to when I was diagnosed with breast cancer and my doctor said lightning struck.
Yeah.
It's a fine line, because when you're first diagnosed, we don't want to go to those conversations because the trauma is so big at that point.
Sure.
But it also did me a disservice, because I just assumed that, the disease just happened.
That you were unlucky, essentially.
That I was, I just, ding dong, here I am, right? Like, just unwanted visitor. And not realizing that there are a lot of factors that I can control to, not just, nowadays make sure the disease doesn't happen in the first place, but to make sure it doesn't come back. So that was really important to me, was to realize there are a lot of lifestyle changes that I can make to improve my health. And that was a really big step for me, to realize, like I said, disease doesn't just wake up one day and say, Holly Bertone, today is your unlucky day. It's years of accumulated everything, the toxins, the lifestyle, the sugar, the processed food, the environmental toxins, the traumas, the everything. It's not just one thing or one factor. It's everything combined. It's years of chronic inflammation that the end state is disease, which is why when you have any kind of disease, whether it's, cancer, autoimmune, diabetes, heart disease, anything like that, the chances of you getting another disease are greater because your body is in that state where the disease is, it's hospital. It's a chronic inflammation, and your body is open and welcoming to that disease state. So that's why responsibility is very important, because, we can look around and, just believe that we are not, responsible for our health and our lives, but this is the only life that we have.
Yeah.
And not just that, it's not just today. Like, we're in midlife. We need to think about what our life is going to look like 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah.
My dad's in a retirement home, and he's independent, but I'll go and I'll look at the women, in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and some of them are very broken. Their bodies are very broken. And some of them are just running around with so much energy. And I was like, that's how I want to age. Like, I want to age with that much energy. And what we do today and how we treat our bodies, how we eat, our environment, what we let in. We're in a world where we consume everything. We consume all of the food. We consume all of the social media. We consume all of the negative news. We consume all of these limiting beliefs about ourselves. We're in toxic relationships. Like, all of these things are consumption, and it's a matter of saying, what good things do I want to allow into my body? Because those decisions today are going to impact how you age 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. That's huge, especially the overconsumption piece as well. Yeah. I think I can sort of get a sense of how bloated we've become, really, not just in the physical sense, but the mental and emotional and energetic sense as well, with all the stuff that's going into the eyeballs. Yeah.
And back to the disconnection, when we're consuming all of this stuff, right? We don't have that connection inside, and we don't have the space to be in the quiet to know what our body really needs and what our body really wants.
Yeah, exactly. It's too much noise in the signal being what the body wants, what the body needs, and the noise which sort of disrupts that.
Yeah. It's not just the external noise, but it's the internal noise. Like, I mean, if we can quiet the external noise and we get quiet, that internal noise is deafening because we're not used to it being quiet, and it's scary.
Yeah.
But that place is necessary.
Yes. So how do we find that place of stillness and silence and internal silence? Do you have any tips?
Not popular, but number one, get off the phone, and number two, get outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds so simple, but we're just not doing it enough to, stop, and especially, like, think about it. When you're at night, at the end of the night, you're on the couch, turn on the TV, and probably within 60 seconds of turning the TV on, probably on your phone. Most people are.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah.
I know. So to be able to disconnect from that phone, to go outside. And I'm not talking, when I say nature, I'm not talking like, oh, go for a hike or go hug a tree or, whatever. Like, I'm talking just get outside, just physically be outside, enjoy the sunlight, enjoy the sky. If you've got some green space, or just take a walk around the block, throughout the day, get some morning sunlight, take a walk after lunch, take a walk after dinner, like that right there. And then putting down the phone more often than you're picking it up. That right there is huge.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Such good advice. What's the C then?
Yeah. So this is go time. This is create your future self. And, we can talk about, we love to go, we love to do, but I really like to do it from that place of, what does my future self want? And especially, again, working with women in mid-age, like we need to think about our health in our 70s, 80s, and 90s, and what we do today and how that impacts. And, I like to think about it from this perspective. Is your goal to lose 20 or 30 pounds? Is your goal to fit back into your jeans, or not have to jump on your bed and do gymnastics to get them zipped up? Or is your goal to eat healthy, nutritious food that fuels your body, that leaves you full and satisfied, that gives you optimal metabolic health?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. Now, it's important that we feel good about ourselves. It's important. Like, I want to feel good about myself. I want to look cute in my jeans.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be able to zip up without having to suck in my gut. Like, that's a bonus day. But that's, again, that external validation. And we need to really flip that into looking inside and what is good for our bodies, what is going to fuel us, what is going to fuel us today,
Yeah.
what is going to fuel us down the road. We do not have the luxury of letting this go. It is never too late to start. I was talking to a woman in her 70s. She's like, well, it's probably too late to me. I said, no, it's not. You start today. You start today, you're going to start to see changes. It is never too late to start.
It's very quick.
But we do not have the luxury at this age to not think about what life is going to look like in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And I love being able to actually create what we want as well. Again, it comes back to this idea of, well, that's quite empowering, isn't it? To know that we have the power to create using our imagination, using our value system, using everything that we know about ourselves and what we want. Because what we want taps into our why. Why are you here? How do you want to spend your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, your 90s? What kind of body do you want to be in? What does your body actually want? And that reminded me of, that question, what is good for the body? Or that, how can I put this? So, for example, I need to eat quite low histamine at the moment because I'm having allergic reaction. So what my body is wanting are things like alkaline herbs, rocket, pea shoots, really natural, fresh foods. What my brain wants sometimes is the kind of quick dopamine, the dark chocolate, the cheese, the bread, all of that stuff that's going to fuel those dopamine receptors. But actually, when I slow down and listen to my body and give my body what it wants, it will always thank me in the long run. So it's having that long-term relationship with your body, not just sort of, that short-term thing of, I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever. Yeah, you do that, but what next? So feeding your body over the long term feels like it's a much better idea than just, there's nothing wrong in wanting to lose weight. I like to lose weight sometimes, especially if I've got bigger, like you say. But having that longer term goal, I think, is going to be much more fulfilling, and you're going to be able to knit it into your identity as well. So it actually becomes you. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And looking at it from that future perspective, and, do you want to be the woman in her, 70s and 80s who travels with her, partner, or travels with her friends, or, wants to go to the amusement park with, kids and grandkids or great grandkids, or do you want to be the 80-year-old woman who's stuck at home by herself because she doesn't have the energy to get out?
Yeah.
So your future self will thank you when you start doing the stuff today. And I was actually kind of joking on Instagram the other day, how many women say, I hate squats. Yeah. But if you think about it, squats, let's say you're 50 years old, and I just did some rough math, so don't come after me. But if you're 50 years old and you live to 85, so that's 35 years, you go to the bathroom 8 times a day, you are going to be doing 100,000 squats over the course of the rest of your life. And that, and again, who are we kidding? Hello, pelvic floor. So, going to the bathroom 8 times a day is amateur hour for a lot of us. So 100,000 squats over the course of 35 years. Yeah. So you can say, I hate squats all you want, but guess what? We're going to be going to the bathroom whether you do squats or not. So, you want to go on vacation, maybe someone will lift your bag, but, getting groceries in and out of the car, putting your suitcase up into the compartment in the airplane, even just, like I said, getting groceries out of the car. These are things that, as we age, keep us independent, keep us out there, keep us having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. What's the K? I'm intrigued.
The K is keep the vision, not the view.
Ah.
And I like to say 100% of the time, and this has never, ever, ever proven me wrong. 100% of the time, you start on your mission to get healthier, to lose weight, to get energy back, to sleep better, all the fun things. An obstacle is going to come and throw you off course.
Yeah.
100% of the time. It's probably going to be sooner than later. And it doesn't even have to be a big thing. Like, especially in the beginning, it's the little stuff that really throws us off course. So this is basically, it's not removing these obstacles because they are always going to happen.
Yeah.
It's changing your relationship with your stress response. And that is key because that will help you to keep the vision, not the view. And we can talk about nutrition and movement all day long. But if you continue to let stress hijack your body, you're not going to see the results that you want. And I love to say that the weight around your midsection will never disappear until you address the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Hallelujah.
And when we can keep that vision and really redirect that stress in our life, we know that we can come up against a bad week. I was working with a client just the other week who had a situation at work. And she's like, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go face this regardless of what the consequences are. Turned out everything was fine, but she was ready for the worst case because she's gone through the exercises and she didn't let that unknown, that anxiety, that stress affect her. And
also,
when you,
sorry, I was going to say, when you are healthier on the inside, don't you have more resilience anyway?
100%, you're not as triggered.
Yeah.
And really triggering, and it'd be interesting your perspective on this, but as I see trigger, it's an unhealed wound that hasn't been addressed yet, that someone just happens to open up, that we don't know is there until, it gets hit. Yeah. So, these triggers are good for us because it opens up, it identifies the wounds that we haven't healed yet.
Yeah.
But it's also great to be in that place when you have these obstacles and the anxiety and the stress happen in your life. And it's like the what is it? The water off the duck's back. You're like, I'm good. I used to be on a scale 1 to 10. That used to spiral me. I used to ruminate about that. I used to be an 8 or a 9 when that came up.
Yeah.
Now, maybe a 2 or 3 to begin with, and then I let it go.
Yeah. It's much easier to let things go. Also, I had a guest on the show right at the very beginning of the Menopause Mindset podcast, launch. And I remember her saying that, I remember her saying that we are more accident prone when we're on that blood sugar roller coaster. And so really our internal health and our external world, how some of the things that we might bump up against are so intrinsically linked that, and of course it makes sense. I've had periods of my life where I've been so healthy, I've slept so well, like literally nothing has touched me. And then for some reason or another, something has happened, usually family related. And it's like, okay, I can feel it starting to chip away at my behaviors again. I'm like, right, okay, I know what's going on here. And that's actually what I wanted to ask you. You said change your relationship to your stress response. What are one of the ways that you can do that our listeners could take away with them?
As you were sharing, the phrase came up, as within, so without. And, we really are, our internal and external worlds are the same.
Yeah.
And really it's from a takeaway perspective, I think it's a bigger perspective. And one of the biggest shifts that I see with the students in my program is creating boundaries.
Yeah.
And when we can break those tethers, when we can break that charge from all of the stuff externally, we're now more connected inside. And we now have better boundaries. So we can say yes or no based on what's right for us, not what's right for the person or the situation. And that, I think, is, again, it's a small step that someone can take today, but it's also a much larger conversation.
Yeah, of course.
And really that is to just check in with yourself. Like if someone asks you to do something, and as people pleasers, we want to say yes, we want to do the thing. We're like, well, if I'm not going to do it, who else is going to do it? You know, if I don't load the dishwasher, well, no one else in the house is going to load the dishwasher. Well, yeah, you ask. Yeah, set some boundaries. Dishwasher can get loaded by someone else in the house. You know? So, or at work, like set some boundaries. We don't like to have the challenging conversations. But when you're in that place of being empowered and confident and you have your power back, I like to, I don't know if you remember the movie Jurassic Park. Remember the velociraptors, they're always looking for the weak spot in the fence. And I believe like we're all kind of hardwired, you know, from toddlerhood. They want the toy, mommy says no, they want the toy, mommy gives it to them, right? So we're kind of hardwired to keep looking, you know, for the weakness in the fence. And we do that with each other. But when you can show up and you're in your power and you say, you know, no, I can't do that. Or I can't do that today, but I can do it tomorrow. Or I can't do this, but someone else can do that instead. Like you can come up with these scenarios. And 9 times out of 10, the person on the other side's like, oh, okay. You know, but in our head, we're like, oh, well, I have to say yes. Or, you know, I'm going to feel guilty about saying no. And, you know, then I'm going to over explain and I'm going to people please and, you know, all of the things that come up. Well, try it out. And it's the most important thing, though, is when you're in your power, which is again, coming back home to you, is being in your power. And I can't tell you how many women have said it works. Like,
Yeah.
I said no to my partner or my mother or my kids or my coworker or my boss. And they're like, they didn't care. Yeah. Guess what? When you're in your power, they respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think people prefer it. I prefer to deal with people who are in their power. It makes me feel secure. I know where I am. I know what kind of, it helps me to manage my expectations. Everything is just so much clearer when someone's operating from a place of power rather than being underhand or trying to manipulate or trying to, you know, they're acting from their trauma wound or their coping strategy, like people pleasing. And because if someone's operating from people pleasing to you, you kind of have to do a dance in your head. You're like, do they really mean that? Or am I going to feel like I'm taking advantage of that person? Or where are their boundaries? You know, and it's all very messy. But I think if you are a people pleaser, like really listen to that message. It's actually better that you do operate from empowerment. It's easier for us. I have this conversation with my husband all the time because he's a real people pleaser. And I'm like, babe, look after yourself. It's going to help me so much more if you take care of your own health. If you say no a couple of times, I will really appreciate it. If you put some boundaries in, I will know where to stand with you. I'll get the message a bit clearer.
And even if you think of going out to dinner with your girlfriends or going out to brunch and the dessert tray comes, and when you're in your power and you're like, no, thank you, I'm good. You know, they're just like, okay, whatever. And they get or they don't get or whatever. When you're not in your power and you're like, oh no, I think I'm going to pass on dessert. I'm on a diet, you know, and you're kind of in that place. What's the response? Oh, just live a little. Oh, this is a special occasion. Oh, just one bite, you know, and they're coming back with that because you're coming into that place being very hesitant. And I've never had a problem, especially with my health and, you know, trying to eat healthier, going out or saying no to alcohol or anything like that. I've never had pushback. Yeah. You know, I may have someone ask a question like, oh, why? But it's a question out of curiosity. It's not a question out of pushback.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm so in my power of this is my health, this is my body, and this is how I'm going to treat it.
Yeah. Yeah. Another hallelujah moment right there. Okay, let's touch on the final why in your Rocky framework.
Yeah, this is really coming back home to you. I mean, this is circa Wizard of Oz realizing, hey, I have this power inside of me this whole time. It's not a spoiler alert. It's always been there.
Yeah.
And, and it's not just, I like to end with a why and coming back home to you. I mean, I think that's the pretty red ribbon, but really what this is you being in so much of your own power now that you get to give that gift to others. Because I don't believe it should stop with you. I believe that this is a gift that we can give to our mothers, to our sisters, to our daughters, to our friends, to our neighbors, to our coworkers. This is a gift that we can give to others. We can create environments in our workplace or in our homes where we're celebrating being happier and healthier. And when you're in that vibration, it's a lot easier to get others on board if they choose.
Yeah.
But when we're kind of going down that path of the negativity and the limiting beliefs, and I'm dieting here and I'm not, and I'm on and I'm off, it's really hard to have that stability or even give that option to others around you. So I think when you can finally come back home to you, it's not just about you, it's the ripple effect for everyone else in your life.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Such a good place to wrap this conversation up. Being of service in this particular way as well, by doing good for you, it, like you say, ripples out into the wider world. It has far-reaching consequences that we can't even fathom. Hugely powerful, and it gives our life, I think, a lot more meaning and purpose. Yeah, which it fills us up from the inside and then creates more energy to keep going with living life in alignment with our own value system and being really strong with that. So yeah, thank you, Holly, for your wonderful information. You really are, so knowledgeable, and your Instagram account is great. So if anyone's listening to this and you've been inspired by Holly, do check her out on Instagram. You post regularly, don't you? And your posts are always so inspiring. And there's lots of other things that you talk about on Instagram that we haven't even touched on today around, nutritional concepts and I'll say diet hacks, but they're not really. They're like lifestyle hacks, food hacks, exercise hacks, just to really tap into that core personal power. So, and you also have a free gift. Would you like to explain what that is for our listeners?
Oh, yes, I do. And yes, please come say hello on Instagram at Holly.Bertone, just my name. And yeah, we play and have fun over there. So thank you so much for that. And I do have a free gift. So if you're listening, if you were like, hey, I really like this Rocky inspired framework, this sounds really cool, and you want to take it to the next step, I have a free private podcast training series. And we do a deep dive. So we've got one episode for each of the steps in the Rocky framework. So you can do a deep dive. It's totally free. And that's at podcastholly.com, which I wanted to get a really easy URL to remember, podcastholly.com. So yeah, take the Rocky framework one step further.
Perfect. I'm definitely going to be listening to that. Thank you so much, Holly. Where are you most active on social media? On Instagram, would you say?
Yes, on Instagram, definitely.
Okay, well, go follow Holly. And once again, thank you so much. I'll put all of your links in the show notes. But yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sally, for having me on the show.
Cool. So I'd love to know what your biggest takeaways were. Be sure to leave a comment below and subscribe, like, and share. Just so you know, not all podcasts are uploaded here. So if you want the full array of episodes, head on over to Spotify or Apple and search The Menopause Mindset. You also might like to come and find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn or TikTok. Just search at Sally Garozzo Mind Mentor. All right, folks, thank you so much for your support and attention. It means the world. Have a great week and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.